Looks like we are live. Looking good. Hi everybody, welcome to another Thursday. My name is Saxon. I am your camera host. Today we're going to be doing our third class of the month. Technically it's the fourth Thursday, but there's 5 Thursdays this month. That's probably too much information for y'all. Let's get this thing started. Today is advanced photography. And let me pull this up so I can see everything. So let's talk a little bit and refresh through what we've kind of been through for the last how many weeks. For those of you who've joined me the last how many times, thank you. I appreciate having you. But for those that are brand new, let's talk a little bit more about this. So today is advanced photography. What advanced photography for us is it is the ability for us to now move into the next or final stage of our photography game. What we're really working on is trying to get better at taking photos with whatever it is that we have. In this case, what we're looking at is in the intro class, we talk about the very bare bones of photography. What does that mean? Well, when we come down to it, when we first buy a camera, we need to learn how to use the buttons. What do these buttons do? Where are they located? Why does it matter? Some common camera terminology terms we talk about, really just very basic, rudimentary, and entry-level things for us to be able to start taking photos. We rely heavily on the automatic button in the beginner's camera class. Intermediate, we talk more about the actual using the camera as a tool. Let's get into more of the manual control, shutter, aperture, ISO, just different properties that help us manipulate and change the camera so that way we can get really good photos, but not necessarily photos that are controlled from the automatic setting. Now in advanced photography, we're getting away from all of that completely. We've learned those things, we've been practicing those things. Now let's talk about the kind of how to take good photos, the basis for that, and then let's talk a little bit more about editing our photos. Then we'll end about content creation and ways for you to maybe boost your page or whatever it is that you're doing in the very intro to basic levels. So, without further ado, let's jump into it. For all those who just started watching, my name is Saxon. I am your camera host. So, let's start with my tips for taking great photos. What I like to tell people about this is that these are my tips that I've learned and I've understood since I became a photographer years ago. I was lucky enough to study in college for this, so I have a lot of different experience with photography. However, at the same time, I also am limited in the fact that I only have an hour to teach you guys. So, with basic photography, we want to talk about basic principles or rules to follow when you're starting to shoot. I will say this much, all rules are meant to be broken. So the tips I give you now, the goal is to take those, manipulate them, and use what you think is best for your photos and discard what you think doesn't help you. But these are the basics that they teach you in the textbooks. We're going to start with portraiture, or people photography, portrait photography, really anything that is a single subject or a couple different subject matters at hand. Then we're going to talk about our landscape photography. Photos that go into more of a, let's say, area or a wider angle shot and looking for details in that. When it comes to portrait photography, one of the first things, and it's a simple thing you can do, is fill the frame. When we take photos of people, objects, things, we tend to get a lot of background interference. We're going to call that negative space. If you look at the photo on the left, everything around our subject is negative space. By cropping all that out and filling the frame, we take away from the distraction of the photo. Is the point of the photo to get the molding on the wall where that light's coming in, the shadows? Probably not. This is probably a headshot for a resume, a website, some sort of portfolio. So it's important that we have a clear and concise picture of our person. Eyes in the top third of the photo. Humans naturally read things up to down. So if you think about a book, you start at the first page. No matter what part of the world you're at, you always always start with the first page, whether it's the back page or the front page. From there, though, you read from the top to the bottom. Comic books follow the same pathway, and so does photography. When we look at this, if we keep the eyes in the top third, as humans, we're more naturally inclined to view the image downwards. From there, then, by keeping that natural selection, again, it makes sense for the human eye. So try to keep the eyes in the top third. If not the eyes, then at least the eyebrows. And I have this image to explain that too. When in doubt, always focus in on the eyes. These new cameras have eye tracking software that work for humans and animals alike. So it's very easy for us to, if we're trying to take a picture of a person, focus in on the eyes. So if I have any tips or tricks for you from this point going forward, focusing in on the eyes of our subject matter or of our person or whatever the object is we're taking will help us get that photo in a much more clear and concise way. If we're not doing a picture of a person, well, we can always use the one-point perspective to then hit on, let's say, a vase or a flower or even, let's say, food or another object that we're taking of one photo of. When it comes to children or people that are shorter, if we can take a photo on their level, it's going to help us a lot to get the better image that we're looking for. What do I mean by that? So if we look at this photo, this is a clean, good photo. This is something that you would see maybe that you took of your kid's birthday party, or maybe that your parents took a picture of you at your birthday party years and years ago. While this is fun and exciting, it does feel a little bit more candid and less professional. Depending on the look that we're doing, if we just duck down a little bit further and get on the same level playing field as the children, we can take something that has a little bit more pizzazz to it and has a little bit more of a professional look. Where that matters is in portfolio building. Where this matters is in more of the fine art side of photography. If you're an up-and-coming photographer and you're working hard to create something that you can either sell or show, taking photos like this versus on the other side are going to plead more to your case of the professionalism that you're capable of. It also, in the long run, too, looks nicer in general. Not to say that this isn't a good photo, but this is a fun photo. One that you might show your kids later on because the one kid's biting the kid's arm, the one kid has their head pulled back all the way, the other one's blowing a kazoo of some sort. It's very fun and exciting, but this adds just a little bit more of a level of professionalism that as a person who might be trying to become a professional photographer or give themselves something that is more artistic or cleanly done, this is a beautiful shot. When in doubt, follow the rules of thirds. The rule of thirds keeps this simple. You have a top, middle, bottom, a right, left, and center channel. From there, then you have 4 points where they intersect. If you can line your photo up within one of those 4 points, you're naturally going to make things more exciting towards the viewer. Now, this works really well with landscapes. This also works really well with people. That's why we recommend keeping the eyes or the eyebrows in that top third, just because it helps the movement that we're having with our own eyes. In this photo, we have our surfer. On the right side, you can see that his body hits the top right third, and then the bottom half, the shadow, hits the other one. Clean sunset, beautiful horizon line, good shine, the colors look really dramatic and exciting. This is the type of thing that, again, would be a fantastic photo to add to a portfolio of work, if that's something that you're going for. Again, same thought process. The girl's shoulder and her ankle are hitting on the left side of our rule of thirds. We have a beautiful dramatic waterscape shot here, beautiful horizon line, black and white, so it hides the clouds and the color that could be there. but it makes it very gloomy or ominous or just dramatic. Here you have mom, dad, sister, brother. Mom and dad are not necessarily hitting that line perfectly, but mom is. Ankle and stomach are at that top third and bottom third on the right side, whereas sister and brother are hitting that almost perfectly. Sister's shoulder is a little bit smaller than where the top third of the left side is, but where their hands are holding with each other, that's hitting really nicely. So again, nice, easy, exciting, different way that you can take a photo and really just put a little bit of pizzazz on this. This would be a great photo to have for family to view above the fireplace or mantelpiece. Just offers a really clean and concise look for whatever it is you're trying to do. I like this last one, just kind of drives home that sometimes filling the space and removing things doesn't necessarily need to happen. And rules are always meant to be considered, but broken at the same time when it comes to photography. Because again, the goal is find our happy space. In this case, you can see that the eyebrows of Jim are on the top third of the image. Jim is hitting our right rule of thirds very perfectly, but instead of removing the clutter that is the window, blinds, and the plant, we keep that there for location reasons. This, if you've watched The Office, is definitely the conference room, and you know that by those two markers that Jim has up next to him. So it's stuff like that that, again, might not make sense in the long run, but do make sense here. When it comes to landscape, and I mentioned it earlier with the surfer and the drone, know your horizon line. Photography for landscape architecture is all about defining the space that you're in. The horizon line is where your sky and your ground meet. The background and the foreground meet at what's called the horizon line. In this case, our horizon is going to be where the mountain's base is. Foreground is then our water, and the background is our sky. So this, with landscape, gives a perfect natural horizon line. The sun would set behind the mountains. But in the same boat, the sun would rise in front of the mountain, or behind the mountains as well too. But we will only see the top of the water. We're not going to be able to see the bottom because our horizon line is where the mountains are. So we can move, we can change, we can go higher, but our horizon line will stay consistent no matter what. Where that matters is then you can set your shot up to be as dramatic or as exciting as possible. In this case, you have a beautiful set of mountains. You've got the sky, the water. You've got some nice reflection, but ripples that are disturbing that reflection. So we don't necessarily have a perfect symmetrical photo. Flipping that a little bit, we have this one, which shows a gorgeous horizon line where the trees are and the mountains, but then delivers a beautiful, crisp reverse image with then the actual reflection in the water. Balance and symmetry are two of the most important aspects that you can inflict within your landscape or architecture photography. When it comes to balance and symmetry, there are a lot of different ways that we can look at it. The horizon line is a great aspect to use and manipulate first and foremost. From there then, though, you also have a beautiful color that's coming from that blue lavender or purple lavender on the fields, but you can see that it's running towards the tree, and these lines create a beautiful balance and almost symmetrical side of that. The lightning is then the part that is a little bit more defined. You've got the thunder and lightning coming down, which of course is uneven and unpredictable, but it's still there and available. Great example, you've got even symmetry and balance all the way throughout this photo, The horizon line meets perfectly with the water, duplicating everything, getting a clean cut looking image. From there then, on both sides of these trees, you have mountains that kind of encapsulate those trees in the center, creating almost like an arena or a dome effect. On top of that, the colors are clean, the water is still. Overall, this is a very clean and just gorgeous image. And then another one here, horizon line in the background, but the symmetrical or balanced part of this image is the yellow line that runs all the way down. You have two sides that are even, but still they're clean, they make sense. Some signage on the one side takes away from that, but that perfectly balanced yellow line in the center of the photo really brings out something that's just a little bit more dramatic or clean. A simple one, but one that I like to explain, sun on your back. When you're taking a photo and you've got something where the sun is coming into the photo, the sun can be positioned on your back, that's completely fine. However, by doing that, what you're running the risk of is not allowing enough sun to hit you, the subject matter. By simply opening yourself up and letting the sun radiate over your back, it's going to allow for it to illuminate the image a little bit better. You can see in the bad image that he's got the fish in front of his face, hat is cocked down, and his back is completely towards the sun, which isn't allowing any light to hit him or come through. By turning himself a little bit, cocking the hat up, and moving the fish out of the way, fish naturally has a good shine to it, it's going to reflect sunlight better, but also we've opened ourselves up, so the little bit of sun that's coming in has a better chance of going. Add that with a little bit of exposure compensation, and maybe even a flash, and you really can get a more well-rounded image that allows for more light and more light penetration. So we've talked about some of the quick tips and tricks that you could use to take a good photo, but what does it take to edit a good photo? So if we're looking at photography as a sense of, okay, let's take the photo, let's make this or this happen from what we're trying to do, we have to now think about how we're going to have our file image. What is the file format? In photography, there's a lot of different ones. You're going to see good, medium, better, or small, medium, large. You might see good, medium, best. There's a bunch of different terms for it, but you will see two consistent things: RAW and JPEG. Why does that matter? Well, if we can look at the RAW photo for a second, we can see that it's flat, it's muted, there's not a lot of color to it. If we can look at the JPEG, there's more color to it, but it's still not far off the RAW, but it looks better. And then if we can look at the RAW that's been processed, we can see the color variation, how much stronger it is compared to the other two, how much more detail, color, tone, roundness of parts of the photo, they pop. Why does that matter? Because at this point, taking a photo is 80% of the battle. 20% of the battle that a photographer will face is editing. It's making the photo pop and sing this tune that you wanted it to do. The camera can do a lot of work, but a lot of the times we need to add that extra little razzle-dazzle. Where that comes from, though, is not your standard JPEG. It's going to come from the RAW, and it's going to come after you process the RAW. Why does a RAW file have the ability to look better than a JPEG? Well, there's a lot of different things, but to sum it up quickly, a JPEG is a compressed file. It's a smaller sized file, so 2 to 6 megabytes on average. The color bit is low, 8-bit. Can be edited on any type of photo editor. It doesn't matter how cheap or expensive. It can be transferred much faster So again, if you're doing a quick shoot, you don't need much. You're not asking for big files or for a heavily detailed image. JPEG's probably enough. However, if we go to RAW, they're uncompressed, meaning they're large, very large. The smallest size for a RAW is 12 to 16 megabytes. I shoot with a 61 megapixel camera. Mine gets all the way up to about 100 to 200 megabytes depending on the image. Now, it can be edited as a RAW on some editing softwares. However, keep in mind that it has to be certain ones. Things like Photoshop and Lightroom will let you do it. Things like your free editor on Microsoft, no. But if you're going to take this in RAW, you're most likely going to have to edit it as a JPEG, so you have to convert the image. Again, think about this as you're going through. If you're someone who is taking photos and trying to get the most information out, again, professional level, you're going to want to shoot on RAW. It's almost standard that you do. But if you're someone who's just taking photos of your kids and having a good time, just trying to get clean cut images, then the JPEG is probably enough for you. Here's the basics on photo editing. This again is how I learned how to do it. I go step by step through these every time I do, but I will tell you one thing right off the bat. It doesn't matter if I just start doing it now or if I've been doing it for a while. No matter what, I go back through and I change things after I go. So after I edit and I go through this initial list, I then go back and tweak and fine tune things until I get the exact end product that I want. So it's not a one-shot go. We have to change things as we're going. That's how we stay competitive, but that's how we make really good photos in the editing process. Here's kind of a showing of what I see when I'm thinking about editing. It's the color, it's the shadows, it's making things pop, it's removing dark spots that don't give enough to the image. Again, we're not changing the image's integrity. What we took a photo of is what we took a photo of. However, we want to make sure that the image is in its best shape and form before we do whatever the end result is. 80% of the battle is taking the photo, 20% is editing. Editing software is to look at. If you're brand new to this stuff and you've never looked at it, do your research. Look up to see what your favorite photographer is using or some of your favorite photographers and what they decided to use. But be ready to make that decision. You don't need to have each one of these editors. They're all going to do something very similar. And at the end of the day, your goal is to make sure that your photos look the best possible. So, by whatever means that is necessary, take a look and see what is going to be the best bet for you. Because again, you have to use this every time. So, first thing I start off with is cropping and cleaning my image. I start by straightening the alignment of the photo. After that, I go through and make sure I don't have any excess negative or dead space. Spot cleaning also should occur at this time. And spot cleaning is simple. There's a button that does it. We're going to look for individual specks or marks that are on the lens that you got while shooting and help remove those. It's kind of like an eraser tool, but with the new technology that these photo editors have, it's not as crazy as you having to go through and color splice and bring over. You really can just use the AI that's built in, and the camera or the program will know what to get rid of when you select those areas. The next step is the white balance. White balance doesn't refer to exposure, rather it refers to the color of your overall composition. You will have less to play with when shooting in standard JPEG versus RAW. Some editors will have presets that you can control and change. Others will have temperature and tint, and some will have both. Again, this is a great way for you to go through and adjust the white of the color. Depending on the situation, the area you are in, you might have already set that. We talked a little bit about that in the last class in intermediate photography. We talked about white balance and how to change it. But some of us keep it on a standard and they want to change or edit or manipulate it later on in the post-production. You can absolutely do that, and you have the ability to, and that's usually the third step that I do when taking photos. Next thing I go through is my exposure and contrast. Exposure plays on the brightness and darkness of a photo. Beware of making a photo too bright because you can get a muted or muddled look to your photo. Contrast plays with the dark and light tones. High contrast makes the image stark with very dark and very light sections. Low contrast will make things look flat or washed out. The goal is always to aim for something in the middle. We want balance when we're doing this. So that's the big thing. Now, when thinking about contrast and exposure, exposure and contrast. I don't know why I was thinking of something else. Anywho, when thinking about that, there's a term or a graph that gets thrown around. Now, this isn't like your 4th grade math class. This is an actual graph that, for the most part, is extremely easy to read. But how useful it is really determined up to you, the photographer. We call this the histogram. And a histogram isn't always needed when editing, but it's a beautiful way of showing you how light is distributed through the photo. The way to think about everything is that light, or the idea of light, can be pure white. From there then, the next one down is black. Black is then the absence of all color of all things that are light, and white is that kind of intensity that is all colors, all one thing at you at the same time. It's a subtraction of it, if you will. When we measure this, we look at the scale of black to white. In the middle you have gray, and that is when what's considered your histogram. It's the measurement of luminosity. Shadows on one side, midtones representing a giant chunk, and highlights representing a very small portion or value. In this case, the peaks and valleys that we're seeing in this histogram are a balanced one. Midtones should be the highest thing in your image because overall, if it's too dark or too bright, you're not going to get enough information out of the photo that you probably want. That's not to say that that is the truth, only truth to this whole thing, though, because there are a lot of ways around that. For example, if we look at a overexposed, properly exposed, and underexposed image, we can see the differences in color, texture, and how dark the image is, and we can see how the histogram is negatively affected through that. Now, if we think about histograms, though, and we throw that out the window and you don't care much about them, the 4 images on the right side should really show that off nicely. You can see how wild the histograms are, how uneven they are, yet how beautiful the images are. But, again, it's important to realize that all the images, everything that we're seeing, can look a certain way and feel a certain way, and the histogram can tell a completely different story. Again, it's not up to the histogram to dictate your photo. It's up to you to dictate whether or not the histogram is something of value. Is it a nice, easy way to see how light is distributed throughout your photo? Yes. Is it the end-all, be-all tool that's going to make or break your photos? Absolutely not. So I think that's a good thing to keep in mind and to think about when using stuff like this. One of the last things I look at is my color vibrancy and saturation. Vibrancy will increase or decrease the color intensity in the brighter colors throughout my whole image. Saturation will increase or decrease color throughout the whole image evenly. And lastly, I have the sharpness. It's one of the last things to do after you edit the other parts of your image. Sharpness will bring out definition and depth of field within your images. Too much will create a halo effect around the image. Last things I tell customers and people in general when they come into the store is you should always, after you're doing any of this stuff, be proud of what you took photos of and enjoy. It's all too often that I think people will get cameras and invest in it, and I'm guilty of it myself too. We basically lock or hide away all of the hard work that we've done and accomplished. And I think that one of the easiest things that you can do is print or display these images. When you're printing, you have all different sizes, but these are the most common sizes listed on the left. Or a digital picture frame, which is one of my personal favorites. It allows for you to do unlimited amounts of photos. And I think it's a really easy and good way of doing that. Now let's talk a little bit about videography and going into more video work, things that I think might be more beneficial to you for if you are trying to get content off the ground. Nowadays, the still picture is still very popular. It's still something that is beautiful and widely accepted, but a lot of people nowadays, for business purposes, for brand purposes, need to work on videography and making videos. Videos sell and have more engagement value than having just still photos. Then filming videos or content, your work will consist of a couple different things, but the three main phases you're going to be going through: pre-production, the initial steps to begin making your project; production, the main phase of capturing clips or films to use; and post-production, putting it all together to make your final piece. To me, these are the three most important things to consider when doing video, and that's resolution, ratios, and FPS. Video resolution, you've got standard definition, high definition, 4K and 8K. Ratios, you're looking at a 4:3:3:2 1:1 16:9. FPS 12 24 60 120. What we're looking at here is using your camera or whatever equipment that you have to capture the content you need, but in the most reliable fashion possible. To set this up on the highest of everything it can do might not benefit you or your camera or products that you have any bit more than setting it up on the worst settings would. Going again through the middle of it to find out what's optimal for the camera you're using and the equipment that you have, and what's going to best suit the content you're trying to make, is a huge selling aspect of this whole thing. When I talk to people about filming or doing anything in general with photography, the three main things you need to focus on are the camera quality, the lighting, and the audio quality. The settings, the production, how to edit, how to do everything comes with time, practice, effort. But if you don't have the right camera quality, so having a camera that shoots appropriately for the content you were trying to make, doesn't have to be movie quality, but it has to work for your project or your page. Lighting. Choosing a lighting method that works well for you. And audio quality, microphones, shotgun mic, on-camera mic, wireless mic. It all comes down to what is going to be best for your products. Getting through it a little bit more, starting with lighting, and I'll go into some other examples. In a perfect world, perfect setting, perfect everything, studio lighting is the key to this whole thing. You have a key light, a backlight, a fill light that really illuminates the subject or the scene that you're trying to film and capture. People can do this with much smaller pieces. You don't need something this big, but this is a perfect way of me explaining it so you get the idea of what it is that you're actually looking for. You want to get away from this and you want something that's a little bit more easy or manageable. On-camera flashes are fantastic. The on-camera LED light or light blocks and ring lights all are fantastic ads to have. Example of microphones. In-camera mics, they're kind of like your easy to use. The way I think about an in-camera mic is like if you just bought your TV and you put it up, you didn't attach a sound bar or a sound system or speakers. That's the kind of quality you're getting from there. You can amp that up and get some really good, better audio quality for this with things like an on-camera microphone, a wireless mic, a boom mic, and if you're using a wireless mic, a lavalier is a perfect way to hide and disguise that so no one sees it. Now stabilizing the shot, getting something so that way you have a clean shot with no shakiness to it. Remember that with most of these products, they already have built-in stabilization. However, a lot of these, while they have built-in stabilization, are still limited in some of what they have, and what they can do, is what I should say. Tripods are a great way to get through getting a good shot. You've got monopods, still photo tripods, we also call them ball head joint tripods, and video tripods. We also have single-handed gimbals, two-handed gimbals, and the kind of crazy, if you will, body gimbal / stabilizer vest. Now, do you need this piece? Probably not. Most people, I would say, don't. However, they are something that you can use and get. Now guys, that is all I have for you for this class. I know this one goes a little bit quicker. Nobody really asked any questions, but I'm going to stay on for at least a few more minutes. If anyone does have something to ask, by all means chat, I'll answer it live. But Beyond the Traditional Camera is next Thursday. It's the last Thursday of the month, so we'll be running that one. That class is about our pieces that are beyond the regular camera that we know and love. This is going to include anything from drones to action cameras like GoPros or Insta360s. This is going to include camcorders and even 360 cameras. It's not necessarily going to be a very in-depth class, but it is one where we really talk about the different products and get a better feel for why this might benefit you if it's something that you're looking for. Like I said, guys, I'll give this a few more minutes. I'll stay on. If you have any questions, want to ask me something, now is the time. Alright guys, so it doesn't look like anybody has any questions for me. I gave it a few more minutes. Perfect. Alright, well, thank you guys for joining. As always, I love having everybody here for our camera classes. We do this weekly. We do 4 classes every week. The first Thursday, second Thursday, third Thursday, and last Thursday of the month, depending on how many Thursdays we have. Wasn't here last Thursday, but we did today. We got next Thursday as well. Next Thursday is beyond the traditional camera, and then we'll pick it up in June for the first of the month, or for the beginning of the month, which will then start back up with the intro to cameras. For everybody watching at home, thank you so much. Anybody in class, thanks for watching.